Absolutely. Well, I think we have to, that biblical word for it is overcoming. It's my carnal part of me that wants to react with a physical response. This is fundamentally a spiritual battle. There is truth, there is objective truth, there is right and wrong, there is good and evil, and the church has to have the wisdom to recognize from the authority of Scripture what that good is, and then have the boldness to express that truth into our culture.
You know, it's not just the issue of who decides what to teach our children or the weak economy, for example, that you hear being discussed and debated at the water cooler these days. There's also the recent leak at the Supreme Court that led people on both sides of the abortion issue to throw up their hands in disgust. So when that happens here, we're going to turn to one of the wise men in the larger TBN family, Pastor Alan Jackson. This is a difficult time in a lot of respects to be a Christian and to follow Christian faith in light of what's happening in the world out there, especially in the aftermath of this Supreme Court leak, because we're seeing in many respects the ground shake beneath the veneer of law and order. Anytime you have fences being put up around the Supreme Court, anytime you have protesters outside the home of Supreme Court justices and those justices facing threats, is not a good time for the rule of law in this country, not a good time for democracy, not a good time for natural law, and from where that came, which is Christianity. What is your advice to Christians? In fact, let me cite one particular video example which I've seen, which tests me in a lot of ways. In a cathedral in Los Angeles this week, we saw people interrupting a church service with protests, pro-abortion protests. If I were in that church at that particular time, it would be very difficult for me not to get up and take a punch at somebody. What would you counsel me to do in that situation?
Oh, I might give you counsel different than what I'd be tempted to take, so just for full disclosure. But I think it is a time where we have to be able to live out grace while we have the strength and the courage to continue to hold a moral line that comes to us from a biblical worldview. You know, what we're watching with the Supreme Court feels to me like the latest escalation in a very intentional dismantling of the institutions that we have trusted so much. You know, from defunding the police to what we've watched with the FBI and the Department of Justice. And now we see even the Supreme Court, which had kind of been above the fray, being forced into this dismantling of trust. And it's very unsettling. You know, he said it's a difficult time to be a Christian. I probably stand with us slightly. It is a difficult time, but I think it's a season of tremendous opportunity. We're at one of those hinge points in history. And the choices we're making in these days are going to determine our future for the months and the years to come. So it's a time for courage and boldness and the strength to stand for what Christ followers know to be the truth. And that's exciting.
And how do you maintain grace in the face of the adrenaline, which seeps up when you want to become a part of a fight, so to speak, a political fight, but a fight nevertheless?
Absolutely. Well, I think we have to, that biblical word for it is overcoming. It's my carnal part of me that wants to react with a physical response. This is fundamentally a spiritual battle. There is truth, there is objective truth, there is right and wrong, there is good and evil, and the church has to have the wisdom to recognize from the authority of Scripture what that good is, and then have the boldness to express that truth into our culture. That's why we've been called salt and light. And I think for too many decades, we have acted as if we were light salt, and our impact has been diminished. And it's time for us to stand up. We don't have to be physical or angry or aggressive or belligerent, but we have to be determined and courageous and bold and unyielding.
Great points. But in this country right now, even in individual families, we're seeing these tremendous divisions. The abortion issue, regardless of what the Supreme Court finds come the month of June, is not going to go away. Maybe almost half the country, depending on how you phrase the question, wants the right to abortion to remain in effect. And nothing I say, you say, or anybody at TBN says, almost half the country is going to stick to their beliefs. How do you reconcile those differences?
Well, I think ultimately the reconciliation is we have to have a heart change. But your analysis is exactly correct. Our last national election, more than 80 million people voted for a party whose platform insisted on abortion on demand at any point in pregnancy. So we are a divided nation, and we have to have a change in the hearts of people. The solutions that we need are not going to come from a politician or a political party. Ultimately, they may be expressed through those venues, but those expressions will only come after the church has delivered with what our assignment is, and that's to stand up for the truth. And if God in his mercy would see to pour out his Spirit upon us, and we would have a heart change. But if the church becomes alive and vital and vibrant, I have hope. If we don't, I really have very little.
To that point, the United States Senate this week is considering legislation which would allow abortion right up to 9 months. How did a body of responsible people in a one-time responsible party come to that conclusion where it's okay to abort a child, which is basically a human being? 9 months. It's just unfathomable, I think, to most people.
No, not basically. It is a human being. Well, I'm a pastor, so I'll answer from that perspective. You know, in the Holocaust, there were 6 million Jews who were killed. We understand that as an expression of anti-Semitism. 2 million of that number were children. Well, I believe the spirit of Antichrist is the opposite side of the coin of anti-Semitism. Same spirit. And on our watch in this nation, we've sacrificed 60 million children to that spirit of Antichrist. We've set aside a biblical worldview and seen those children sacrificed. So it's going to require those of us that even believe in life and choose life, we've got to put our faces on the ground and say, God, on our watch, we have been indifferent and ambivalent. The problem isn't the depravity of the wicked. The real challenge has been the burgeoning ambivalence of the faithful. And if we will change our hearts, I believe we will see God intervene.
You know, I had this same kind of a conversation over dinner not too long ago with some friends and family. We were talking about these irreconcilable differences which exist in this country right now. And somebody at the table asked me, well, what's the ultimate solution to this? And while I agree with you, I postulated that it might take something really severe, like a war or a civil war, in order for these changes to come to fruition. Do you think it would require that?
That's a very good question. And I think ultimately that is in God's hands. But I think it will take the courage on the part of God's people to stand unflinchingly, no matter what that consequence is. That's what the Scripture holds out to us. Daniel's 3 friends said, we won't bow to that statue no matter what the consequence is. Daniel said, I will pray 3 times a day. The sufferings that Paul endured, all of those things were expressions of the truth in the face of opposition and a refusal to yield. And the church hasn't had that attitude for several years. We have committed ourselves to compliance and to tolerance, and everything is negotiable and truth is subjective. And I believe if we will begin with a repentant heart, we'll find the strength to stand. But it's been a while since we've stood, and so we're going to have to exercise that muscle a bit.
Another difficult question. The man who brought us 3 of these conservative Supreme Court justices who may rule in favor of overturning Roe v. Wade is, to give him some degree of credit, is an imperfect man, to say the least. We could talk about Donald Trump's affairs. We could talk about his bombastic nature, his narcissism. He is an imperfect vehicle. What do you say to the divisions within the Republican Party and in conservatism who say he's just too imperfect for me?
Right. Well, I'm probably more comfortable speaking to God's people, to anybody. I think we don't choose our leaders we're not recruiting them to be pastors or to be even spiritual leaders. What we're asking them to do is stand for the values that we support, the worldview that we embrace. I think we're hearing it again with Elon Musk, and we're trying to discount his ability. He's standing up for free speech, which really supports our ability to preach the gospel, which is being infringed upon and censored. And I'm not reviewing his past. I'm simply celebrating the fact that he would stand for free speech, or former President Trump would stand up for life, or stand up for truth in the church, or the freedom of the church. I think those are things that we have to support. We are not rubber stamping the moral lives or their past perspectives, but I think we have to stand up for expressions of the truth.
Pastor
I'm tired of politicians who have photo ops in front of churches and then support ungodly, wicked platforms and ideas and want the church to embrace them because of their previous photo op.
Hi, I'm Doug McKelway, and thank you for watching Centerpoint. We hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. Leave a comment below and keep the conversation going by sharing this video with a friend who needs to see it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow.